Tee time for the first round of the Valero Texas Open is Thursday morning with 6 of the world's top 30 players in the field, and we'll preview the event with in-depth player analysis, course knowledge, the latest odds, trends, and picks as Prime Sports Golf on the Prime Sports Radio Network starts now. All right, you're listening to Prime Sports Golf for this Tuesday, the 17th of April, 2018, with Jeff Shane, Brady Cannon, and Joel Cook on the Prime Sports Radio Network. Prime Sports Golf is brought to you by ProGolfWeekly.com and Covers.com. Make sure to visit Covers experts at experts.covers.com. And you can take 50% off any purchase by using the promo code PRIME50. That's PRIME50. All right, time to introduce my co-host to the show. He's a PGA Tour.com contributor. You can find his first look reports every Friday prior to each event on the PGA Tour, Jeff Shane. So, Jeff, you were at Harbor Town all week, and I hope our listeners got lucky with our trend tip last week on the show, as once again a player wins the RBC Heritage, coming off the pace, this time doing it down 6 strokes.
Which is not a record, but it's the second time in the last, I believe, 7 years that the margin has been 6. Because you can even go back to when Brandt Snedeker beat Luke Donald, coming back from 6 strokes off the pace to win in a playoff. The place you don't want to be at Harbor Town is sleeping on the lead Saturday night.
All right, so we're going to take a look at this week's event to get things started, the TPC San Antonio Golf Course. And they've been playing at this course since 2010 for the Texas Open. So that means it is time for Inside TPC San Antonio, brought to you by Covers.com. So welcome back, Covers.com golf handicapper and regional manager of TeeTimesUSA.com, Brady Cannon, to the show. Brady, good talking to you again.
You too as well, gentlemen. On to Texas this week. How are you guys?
Doing good. So what did you think about that crazy win last week? I mean, I was actually pulling for Kodaira because, it's a nice story, and it's nice to see a player from over in Japan perform well, get a win. That doesn't happen very often, except for Matsuyama. And Siwoo Kim was starting to kind of rub me the wrong way, sort of like he was another Scott Stallings or Johnson Wagner. It's like, come on, man. I mean, you play good once a year and you win. I mean, I don't like those guys.
Well, he is starting to be a little bit more consistent. Watch out. The guy definitely has some talent. And boy, can he play on Pete Dye designs, huh? Harbor Town, and, of course, his victory last year at the Players' Championship. Kodaira, maybe, a little Freddie Couples rubbed off on him. He was really introduced to many people at the Masters when he was paired with Couples. And here at the Westgate, locally in Las Vegas, Kodaira went off at 250 to 1.
Nice.
So not a bad ticket if you had that.
Not at all. And he was also a pretty good dog. I threw a couple of bucks on him on Sunday because we all knew the trend. And I was looking for some guys, and once he got off to that good, and I didn't take him at the beginning of the day, but once he started to go a little low, and he was early, I think he was a few under par early, and nobody else was really playing like that. I was like, okay. I mean, I think at the time he might have been somewhere still at around 15 to 1 at the time, early enough in the day. And I said, sure. I mean, I'll go after him. I went after him and Bill Haas, and Bill Haas didn't play well, but Kodaira did. So. Again, that's why you got to take advantage as much as you can on the golf course, not just the entire event, but hey, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it's 4 days, and that's why we always ask you about the first day matchup. So, what do you think about the matchups this week, and how are you going to get into the matchups this week on this golf course? Because when I look at the past winners of this event since they've been playing at TPC San Antonio, not a lot of heavy hitters, it looks like. Sure, some major champs have won, but it's just one of those events where you see a lot of guys that are kind of in that medium range. So what do you think?
Well, yeah, you don't have a lot of the huge names show up for this event, but as far as heavy hitters, these guys have done well in terms of driving distance at this golf course. There is some importance to driving accuracy as well. Of course, the Oaks course at San Antonio is lined with oak trees, so the fairways are pretty wide, but you certainly want to avoid the trees. But if you look at the past tournament winners, they have ranked high in driving distance for the week, and you do have some pretty big hitters on that list of former winners. I tell you one thing that you'll find that is pretty common among all of them is they're good wind players. And you see a few Australians that have won here. The tournament, of course, has been here since 2010, as you mentioned, and you see some Australians there. The Australians are known for being able to play in wind because they grow up in conditions like that. You've got a Texan on there in Jimmy Walker. Of course, we're in Texas this week, and this time of year in the Southwest in the United States, you get a lot of wind. And then you've got Charlie Hoffman, who played at UNLV here in Las Vegas, and he's come out and even said before that playing in Las Vegas in the springtime, he really had to learn how to play in the wind. And we've got wind going here today. It's blowing pretty decent today. Yesterday it really blew about 30 miles an hour. So these guys that grow up in Las Vegas, Texas, Australia, they dot that leaderboard for this Texas tournament.
All right, so we'll take a look at that. And therefore, when you look at the first round matchups, what intrigues you the most? Which one do you like?
Well, this was a tournament in 2015 where we saw some brutal weather conditions. And, I talk about 30-mile-an-hour winds. That was evident at the Valero at TPC San Antonio in 2015. And you could really take advantage of some of those early round matchups, even full tournament matchups, by just looking at the draw. Who was going to be starting early on Thursday, late on Friday, vice versa, early or late on Thursday, early on Friday, and the wind pattern coming in, and you could really set yourself up for some advantages there on who was going to catch the worst and the least of the wind.
Okay, now when they have matchups, do they usually have matchups with players that are pretty close as far as the tournament odds? Will they, and I'm only talking about first round, will they sometimes go with a player that might tee off at 7 in the morning against a player that might tee off at 1 in the afternoon? Yeah,
you will see that on occasion. For the most part, the individual round matchups will often be just, who's paired together.
Yeah.
But you can also find guys that are not paired together where, like you say, they just happen to be close to each other on the odds board, like you'll see for the full tournament head-to-head matchup. So you can find a little bit of both, but if you're able to find a grouping where, and if you take a look at the forecast this week, it looks like it's going to be pretty steady in the 15 to 20 mile an hour neighborhood. But if you can find a pattern there where maybe the wind will die down in the afternoon and you've got a matchup that matches that, that might be one to play on.
All right. Well, give me a contender that you like this week based on the odds.
Well, this week, like I mentioned, driving distance is a factor. It's pretty interesting, too, guys, and I'm sure you guys can speak to this, too. You've got Greg Norman, who designed the course, and then Sergio Garcia serving as his player consultant. And I think many people would, be fine with saying Greg Norman and Sergio are probably a couple of the best players of all time. And they have a wide array of skill sets, and they were good at doing just about everything. And this golf course, it's hard to extract just a few items that you need to be good at to be successful at this course. Rather, you really need to be good at a little bit of everything, and that's like Norman and Sergio are. So I think it's kind of interesting that the course mirrors a little bit their designers and what it takes to play well or be successful here. So it's hard to pin down some exact skill sets that you need to be good at this week, but we talk about the wind, and I think when you have wind, you obviously need to be a good ball striker, and you need to have a low ball flight. If you're hitting that ball up high in the air, it's going to swirl, and you could get into trouble. Zach Johnson is a guy that hits the ball pretty low, and I've been talking about him a lot the last few weeks because he's playing very well, and he's had a ton of success here at the Texas Open. Now, when he won, it was in 2008 before they switched to this new course.
Sure.
But he can play well in Texas. And another guy that's been playing very well, had a very nice week last week at Harbor Town where there was a little bit of wind as well. That's Ryan Moore. And Moore have finished 18th here last year in Texas. And also, like I mentioned with Charlie Hoffman, Ryan Moore is another UNLV Rebel who has had to learn to play in the wind as well. So Ryan Moore and Zach Johnson, a couple guys that I'm looking at that you can find somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 35 to 1.
All right, and any particular long shots that you have your eye on? There are a lot of long shots this week. I mean, this is probably, at this point in time, I have to say, I think this is the weakest field that we've had all season.
Well, certainly one of the weaker ones we've had in a little while. And another guy that's been playing very, very well all season long, been doing great in ball striking, hitting a lot of greens in regulation, very accurate off the tee, and that's Kevin Streelman. Good in scrambling too, and I think you are going to need scrambling this week with the wind blowing. You're not going to be able to hit every green in regulation. It's going to send some shots awry, and you're going to have to get up and down. So Kevin Streelman at 50 to 1 looks pretty good. And another guy, a guy that I liked last week at Hilton Head, and he never really quite kicked it into gear, but that's Jason Kokrak. And he's a big hitter. He certainly has the distance, and he's been around this track a few times and had some success. So there's a couple of longer shots that I like this week.
All right, Brady, how's everything going on over at Tee Times USA?
Busy, man. It's finally starting to slow down a little bit, but March is a huge month for us with all of the basketball tournaments that come to town and the NASCAR and the conventions. March is really probably our busiest month of the entire year. So people come to town and they want to play golf, and that keeps my phone ringing quite a bit.
All right, well, get back to that. Best of luck, of course, this week. Handicapping this event, careofcovers.com, and we'll talk to you again next week. I guess we got that crazy format next week in New Orleans.
Yeah, that one's become really fun. What was kind of started to be a dud tournament there for a few years, I think is they've infused a little life back into the deal.
It'll be interesting to see what the teams are. I mean, that's because last year we got some surprising long shot teams, so. That's a good thing, I guess, if we can pick the right ones. So, Brady, good luck this week, and we'll talk to you again next Tuesday.
I look forward to it, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Brady. All right, that's Brady Cannon. And once again, go over to covers.com, or more specifically, experts.covers.com, and take 50% off any purchase. Use the promo code PRIME50. That's PRIME50. All right, so we've got... Now, one of the things I did want to touch up on with last week, Jeff, we were going over just a little bit as far as Kodaira's comeback win and Siwoo Kim almost pulled it off. But when you take a look at this Kodaira player, how do you compare him to some of the other Japanese players that we have seen come over here and repeatedly fail? That's why this is so interesting. Because, again, just knock out Matsuyama, and it had been, probably you have to go back 20, 30 years. How long had it been? If Matsuyama is not on the PGA Tour, how long had it been before that since the Japanese player had won?
I think it probably would have to go back to the early 2000s. Remember when Shigeki Maruyama was on the tour and won a couple of times? I remember one at Riviera. Coming through the field there. I think he had 4 PGA Tour wins. So he was kind of the one before Matsuyama that had any sort of success. And there was definitely about a 10-year gap, maybe even longer, before we saw Matsuyama, win the Asian Pacific Amateur and then start to have success as a professional. And Kodaira had said on Sunday that it's always been his dream to play on this tour. He's actually about 4 years older than Matsuyama, so their paths really haven't even crossed all that much. He did try to qualify for the Web.com tour a few years ago, didn't have a good run at it, went back to the Japan tour, decided to focus on that, but never really gave up the dream. He just decided instead of going to the Web.com, I'll hone my game and learn how to win on the Japan tour. And as my world ranking rises, we'll give it another shot. For a lot of other Japanese players, it hasn't worked, but Kodaira was putting together decent performances. He was 28th at the Masters. He made the cut at Bay Hill earlier this year. He's been on kind of a good run. It looks like he's a really consistent type player, but really had not brought his game across the pond taken any sponsor exemptions except for the Sony Open in Hawaii. So really kind of an unknown, even at Bay Hill, even at the Masters. But his game looks like, that he's not a long hitter, but he can play consistently, and he will play well, I think, on courses like we saw at Harbour Town, the shorter, tighter courses, which are a little bit more familiar looking to Japanese players, because let's face it, land use in Japan, you can't build a 7,700-yard golf course. They're all a little shorter, all a little tighter.
All right. Well, before I introduce our next analyst, who was probably had a sigh of relief when Siwoo Kim didn't win, considering how many times he had taken him or suggested taking him recently as a long shot. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. Receive our latest opinions, on-demand programming alerts, including when every show is available on demand, like this one. So joining us from ProGolfWeekly.com, a weekly digital magazine that covers pro golf around the world, is ProGolfWeekly.com lead writer Joel Cook. And Joel, first of all, I wanted to ask you what you thought about the news that we heard this week. The FedEx St. Jude in Memphis is going to replace the WGC Bridgestone at Firestone Country Club in Akron. That's, I guess that makes sense considering it's FedEx and the sponsorship with FedEx and all of that. But I don't know. This is one of those things where I'm like, okay, I guess we're about to find out whether the St. Jude Classic had become stale because of the players or the golf course.
Well, Firestone was a lot more memorable and kind of really stands out a lot more than Southwind in my mind, when they see up all the time. So it's kind of, I'm an Ohio native, so it's kind of sad to see them lose that. Like you mentioned, it's largely a sponsorship thing. Bridgestone's contract runs out after this year, and they, business, their vision and marketing strategies, they're trying to get away from that, although they are getting the senior players. So,
that's good
Tiger, Tiger's going to end up reaching 10 wins at one course, maybe in 9 or 10 years when he's playing the senior players or something.
Okay.
That'll
be interesting.
There's been a lot of good times at Firestone.
Yeah.
I was reading up on some old-time stuff. I wasn't, back in 94, I was reading that John Daly hit into the group in front of him twice because he was getting so impatient. That was a little before I started following, but that sounds hilarious. I don't know if there's any videos of that out there.
I don't know.
It's not hilarious if you're the group in front.
Yeah, not for them. For everyone else.
Well, then again, I mean, who knows? Maybe if they were on the clock like they were supposed to be, they would have been penalized. So maybe John Daly was ahead of his time, which he actually was.
But Daniel Berger should be happy to have a WGC event down there. He's done so well on that course.
Yeah, it's going to be. I mean, what do you think, Jeff? You think it's going to wind up being, because so far it seems like Joel and I are leaning towards it's the golf course and not the field. So now that they're going to have the best field they've ever had on that golf course, will that make a big difference to that particular event? Well, again, it is a WGC, but do you think it's going to be something where we're going to go, oh, you know what? This course is better than I thought it was.
That's certainly possible. And let's remember that Memphis is played at TPC Southwind. So the PGA Tour, through its TPC arm of golf courses, will now probably pay a little bit more attention to how Memphis is prepared. Not that it was prepared poorly, because all your PGA Tour courses are pretty darn good. But don't be surprised if they announce, we're going to tweak this, and there's going to be a little bit of renovation after the 2018 event to get ready for 2019, make it a little tougher, maybe bring some greens closer to water, things like that. That would not surprise me at all, because they do want to play this event on a little bit higher standard golf course. But I think the biggest problem that we have seen with Memphis in the last 10 years is simply where it was on the calendar. It was the week before the U.S. Open, and there are just a lot of guys that will not play the week before a major, unless you're a Phil Mickelson or somebody like that. And those half dozen guys, it's valuable. And It worked for Houston to get ready for the Masters. I don't think it worked as well for Memphis. That's just a tough spot on the calendar. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pick up tournament operations the week before the U.S. Open, and we're going to move it to the first week of August. It's still hot in Memphis. The difference, I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, Memphis in August." Well, the old event was Memphis in June. The difference is 2 degrees, according to the meteorological people. So
okay.
It's still going to be hot. But you're going to find it a better date. It's going to be 2 weeks after the Open Championship. It is going to be the next to last event on the FedEx Cup regular season. And my understanding is that the regular season is now going to go FedEx Invitational, WGC FedEx. Greensboro is going to be moved to keep its last regular season slot. It's just going to go earlier, and then the playoffs are going to begin. I think having a great field always elevates a tournament.
Sure.
And so I think that's what we're going to see. And honestly, I like Firestone, and there have been some great moments at Firestone. I think Firestone has always had the benefit of being a big event venue. Before the WGC, it had the World Series of Golf. It had a couple of major championships, and that always helps. But I also thought that it kind of got a little monotonous. It's the same. It's a routing that is very strictly up and back and up and back. Not a lot of variety to the holes. And I think maybe that's part of the reason why Tiger Woods was so strong on that course too. So okay. I'm not objecting at all to going to a different venue.
All right. So that starts next year?
Starts next year.
Next year. Okay.
And we should get the entire new schedule in a couple of weeks here when the tour goes to Ponte Vedra for the Players Championship. That's when it is expected that we will have the announcement of the full 2019 schedule. I think they just kind of dribbled out some of these big events and told us where they were going to be on the schedule as kind of an appetizer, but we're going to get the whole meal at the Players Championship.
Yeah, I'd like to, when they're changing the schedule around, I'd like them to maybe, I don't know, either move up Wells Fargo to next week, or do something else. I just think that you get so psyched for the Masters that then all of a sudden you got 3 weeks where you're like, oh, come on, man. I mean, I understand the 1 week drop off, but hey, RBC Heritage is a nice, fun little course, and it's got a lot of tradition. But the field just drops. I mean, the players take off, and this is just not a good field this week. And then you've got the pairing next week, the team golf next week. So I just think it's too much of a hangover for me. It's 3 weeks of a hangover. That's a full month almost before we get to another really interesting, good, tough golf course where we'll get some good players that'll start gearing up for a nice little stretch run. Because Wells Fargo, what's the next big event after Wells Fargo?
Well, the Wells Fargo in the current schedule is the week before the Players Championship, so they'll go back to back. And I think it's this part of the schedule. I think from Postmasters to pre-U.S. Open, that is going to be the most interesting juggle.
Okay.
Because of some of the moving parts. This event this week, the Valero Texas Open, is going to move into the pre-Masters schedule, and it's actually going to move into the week before the Masters, which I'm not. I know that's what Valero asked for. Valero's another pretty well-heeled and long-time sponsor on the PGA Tour, and with Houston having its financial problems and they still don't have a sponsor, Valero asked for their spot.
Okay.
Valero got their spot, but the difference is that Houston did a great job in preparing that course at Golf Club of Houston to get ready for the Masters.
Yeah.
TPC San Antonio is kind of the anti-Augusta National. And I don't know how many players, except for those that feel like they absolutely have to get a running start no matter what the course to go to get ready for the Masters.
Yeah.
I can't see the same thing. They may be careful for what they wish for here.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, and I agree with what you're saying. But boy, would that have to be, I guess you could take off like Sergio out of this week and then that's it. Because to tell you the truth, he's really the only star power this week. So why not take a chance? Why not? I don't think you have anything to lose. If the field isn't as strong as it is this week, then I'd be shocked. I mean, it could be, but I think it's worth the gamble. All right. So you want to say something, Joel?
On that, no. Jeff covered that all really well.
Did you want to say something on something else?
No, they got most of it. You guys covered the RBC Heritage a little there. I mean, I couldn't see it because I don't live down there.
What'd you think about Siwoo Kim? You must have been sweating that one out, going, "Hey, wait a second." I mean, I've taken it a couple of times at 100-1, 200-1. I'm talking you up, and then I don't touch you, and you're about to win.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys. I bring him up just because you don't know what tournaments all of a sudden he's going to show up and start competing in. But well, that guy cannot putt at all. And I mean, I guess we already knew that about him, but his stats have just been so awful outside of the few tournaments a year that he really, those rare tournaments that he really shows up for. But he has 4 missed putts inside 8 feet over the last 4 holes. I mean, great for Codiera. I mean, he's been looking. I thought he looked good at the match play too. He's someone that seemed to be on the way up a little bit. And I mean, good for him. But Kim should not have allowed that to get into a playoff.
Well, I know they were talking, Jeff, about they might have been talking about him getting tight or something. I don't think he was getting tight. I mean, he almost chipped in the ball on 17. I thought, all his approach shots were fine. I just think it was his putting game. It just hasn't been good.
Yeah, it would have been better if he had been a little bit better with his wedge, because here's how bad his putting is. This week, Siwoo Kim is ranked 202 out of 210 players on the PGA Tour.
Sure.
And that was an improvement of 7 spots over where he entered last week. He was number 209 out of 210. I'd be running to see Dave Stockton or some putting guru after what happened last Sunday at Harbortown.
Yeah, see, if he was 20th in the world and missed all those putts at the end, I'd go, all right, he let the pressure get to him. He couldn't sink a putt. But when you're not putting well all year and you don't putt well in those circumstances, I'm not going to blame it on you choking. I'm just not. I'm sorry. All right, let's get to this week's event. And again, Sergio's the favorite at 14-1. Then you got Matt Kuchar. A lot of players very close in odds. There's really no major heavy favorite. Garcia is the favorite, but getting 14-1 with your favorite just tells you all you need to know about this field. But then you've got some former champs pretty close to the top, like Chappell and Hoffman, who have won the last couple of years. And Adam Scott's also here, 2010 champ. So Joel's got the first pick this week, and then Jeff goes. So Joel, who are you going to pick this week? Because you can take anybody. We can all take anybody.
Yeah, and that's true. It's just trying to drum up excitement for this. So this is a weak field, but there's still some interesting stories out there. And the 2 guys that really stand out to me are Luke List at 18, or now 18-1. I just saw a live change on there.
Oh.
And I mean, he's just been so hot. He's hard to not take right now, especially with his length, and he's just contending everywhere. But I'm gonna go with one of the other favorites up there. I mean, Charlie Hoffman. He's kind of a streaky guy, but he always plays this course well. I mean, the stats for it's been floating around. He's something like 41 under since it moved to the Oaks course, and the next closest is way back there. He's a bit of a streaky guy. He's starting to play a little better lately. He hasn't been fantastic, but he was in the story early against the Masters, finishing tied for 12th there. Was in the top 15 at the Arnold Palmer. He had a few good rounds at the RBC Heritage, even though the final standing T23 wasn't overly impressive. And his course history is just too good here. Like Brady said, he knows how to play in the wind and all that. I'm gonna go with the more sure bet over List.
All right. Well, Hoffman is. Let's keep in mind that the only time on this course that he hasn't played well was when he defended his championship last year. Sure. So other than that, he had 7 straight top 15s, including the win in 2016. The only thing is with Hoffman is he hasn't had a top 10 since the runner-up at Hero, so he's playing okay. He's not as hot as he was last year, pretty early in the season when he was really we were just going, when's this guy going to win? But again, this is definitely a player. And Jeff, you got the next pick. It does seem like most of the players that win here seem to have a good history here, at least some sort of history here. Very rarely do you see a winner on this golf course win with where they haven't done anything.
You're right about that, and especially. I find TPC San Antonio just a really unique venue. It's got all the oak trees and all that, but there's a lot of natural vegetation, dead wood, underbrush type stuff that you find in Texas Hill Country. It's perfectly natural to the venue, but I think it's a different look. And with the winds, it could be a different feel, especially, if you are coming from Augusta, if you're coming from, Harbor Town, you are, kind of changing your golf culture a little bit, going from those courses to TPC San Antonio. So, I think it's one of those where it fits your eye, or sometimes, what we've seen in a couple of winners too is, guys that have been knocking on the door finally actually kick it in with a Texas boot, I suppose.
All right. So who are you going to go with?
And along those lines, Hoffman was going to be, well, he was at the top of my list, but the next guy on the list, his name is List, and he's been knocking up the door. I mean, he was runner-up at Honda, and that's a tournament that had a lot of wins. He was third last week at Harbor Town, a tournament that has a lot of wins. So I think he's going to just kind of keep going with that theme right now. He is especially long for his size, and he was one of the longer hitters as a collegiate and early in his career. Before I think he figured out maybe I better dial it back and hit some more fairways. But he's getting awfully close, and I think just like Kevin Chappell last year, where he had the 4 runner-ups, and we were thinking, when's this guy going to win a tournament? Boom, here it is. Might be that way for Luke List too.
All right. By the way, what's Hoffman? Is he still 20-1, Joel?
He is.
Yes.
Okay. So List now down to 18, you said?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So there you go. Hoffman and List. Look, I guess rare that as the third pick, picking third, that I get the opportunity to take the favorite. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'll take Sergio. I know he hasn't a lot of experience here. He played here the first year that they moved to this golf course, and maybe he just needed to test out his own semi-creation. So 45th way back when. But look,
and you could tell he really liked it because he didn't come back for 7 years.
That's true. So I don't know why he's here. Maybe you think his wife has something to do with it? I mean, I don't know.
I do think him being a Texan now, he lives in the Austin area, but I think him being a Texan actually does have something to do with it.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I'm not red hot on him, but in this field and his talent, I'll go ahead and take him as my top pick at 14-1. Joel, who are you going to go with your second pick?
Well, Sergio off the board. I guess I'm feeling like in kind of a UNLV mood today. Let's go with Ryan Moore. He's, it doesn't seem like we've heard a lot from him this season, but he's actually playing pretty well. He's finished top 25 in 50% of his starts. He's got some good starts lately. He was tied for 5th at the Arnold Palmer. He was tied for 16th at the RBC Heritage. I believe he was 2nd in greens and regulation and driving accuracy there. And he's only played this course twice. He was tied for 8th in 2012 and tied for 18th last year. It seems to finally be coming back around. I thought last year was a little bit of a disappointment after the Ryder Cup year, but he looks like he's coming back around in a field this week. It's someone that knows how to play out there. I think it's a good bet.
Yeah, Moore has, again, he's played well here a couple times and is playing pretty well recently. So not a bad idea to go with Ryan Moore at 25-1. As your second choice. All right, Jeff, you've got Luke List. Who is your second choice?
I'm going to kind of continue with my theme as well, of guys who are coming over with hot hands that tend to play well in wind or in Texas. And we finally saw a sighting of Billy Horschel for 4 days at Harbor Town.
Sure.
He's had top 5s at TPC San Antonio 3 times in the last 6 years. And I think that he's been very strong. He's been working on his iron game. That's kind of the part of the game that slides that was sliding for him. It's always something. It's your putting, it's off the tee, it's your iron game, it's your short game, it's something. But he was very positive about what he was able to do at Harbour Town, and he's still kind of putting the final touches on that. But this is a time of year where he has won before. And as I say, he has played well at San Antonio. So going from Harbour Town to San Antonio, I think is a good thing for him.
Yeah, 3 top 5s in 7 appearances, 5th last week. So as we said, if more, past history says that you got to have some good results here on this golf course to win, and Horschel definitely qualifies. All right, look, I mean, I'll take advantage again. I'll go with Matt Kuchar. The second choice. So I'll take the top 2 choices as the third guy picking this week. Kuchar's got a good history here with 4 top 25s and 6 appearances, 4th in 2014, and he's playing steady. So maybe, how long has it been since Kuchar's won, Jeff?
2014.
Wow. All right. Well, he's overdue. So I'll go ahead with Matt Kuchar as my second choice. So I'll take the top 2 players. All right, Joel, who are you going with? Number 3.
Well, I was assigned. It was really difficult last pick between Ryan Moore and this guy, and he's still there, so I'm happy to take him. Brandon Steele, another player who he's won this tournament before. Finished one stroke ahead of Charlie Hoffman and Kevin Chappell one time for his win. He's played pretty well lately. He's tied for 5th. He's 5th on tour in strokes gained off the tee, 8th in greens in regulation. He's got some other good finishes here too, a T13, a T8. And he hit that 3rd at the Phoenix Open. He's been playing pretty well and seems to have an eye for the course. At 33-1 odds, I think is pretty good.
All right, Steele in the books, 33-1, 4 top 15s in 7 events with the win. In 2011. So, Jeff, as far as the top players on the board, you've got defending champ Kevin Chappell. He's at 28-1. You've got Adam Scott at 30-1. So those, and he's the 2010 champ, and he hasn't played here since defending his championship in 2011. So, are you taking either of those players, or do you have someone else in mind?
No, neither of those players are coming in with any momentum. They are definitely more on the cold scale than they are the hot scale. And I'm going with hotter hands this week. And this one, he's not a Texan in the truest sense because he grew up in California, but he is a University of Texas guy. And he did very well at Harbour Town in his first experience there last week after the playoff loss in Houston. So playoff loss in Houston, shook that off, got a top 20 last week at Harbour Town, led the field in putting, which is never a bad thing. So maybe Beau Hossler gets his breakthrough at TPC San Antonio.
All right, Beau Hossler played here for the first time last year, did not go well at 8 over par, missing the cut. But he's playing some pretty good golf now, and he's got maybe some home cooking too. All right, I'm going to stay in the H's and go with Chesson Hadley at 35-1. Hadley starting to pick up his game again, 7th last week. He was 4th here 3 years ago, so I'll take Hadley at 35-1. All right, long shot time. Players that are 50-1 or higher. So what do you like, Joel?
Well, if this podcast, if we had broadcast an hour ago, I was going to be all over Julian Curry at 50-1 odds, but all of a sudden he just dropped to 40-1 odds. There's a lot of movement going around on this field in the last hour here. So I guess I can't do that for my long shot, but I'll continue the theme of players who are just extremely familiar with this course. I'll go with Ryan Palmer at 50-1. I know he's been pretty terrible lately, but he just seems to have something about this course where he's like 3 or 4 top 10s here, a couple 4th place finishes, and Well, overall, he's been pretty poor this year. He does have a few highlights. He was tied for second at the Farmers Insurance. He got on that playoff there. Last week, he had around 265 the RBC Heritage last week. His other rounds were just awful, but at least he was feeling something there, and he loves the course.
Yeah.
I guess 50-1 was his kind of course history. That's
yeah. No, in this field, he's definitely up there as a good long shot, finishing 6th, 4th, and 6th. His last 3 appearances here, being a Texas A&M grad, 5 top 15s and 8 appearances. So he is definitely a horse for the course. Really hot here. So that sometimes you disregard how the player's playing because it doesn't matter. He comes to a golf course he's familiar with, he likes, and that's that is what matters. All right, Jeff, who's your long shot?
Yeah, I was looking at Palmer as well because as a Texan, he does play well on Texas courses. This might be a little bit of a flyer, but he's actually had a very good run here over the last 6 weeks or so with 3 top 20s, including 8th in Houston. He's Mexican by heritage, but also went to college in Oklahoma. So there's a lot of wind there as well. So I'm going to take a player. I don't know if we've ever put him on a board yet, but Abraham Ancer is going to go into my long shot category. He is 70-1.
All right, Abraham. What do we know about Abraham Ancer? As you said, look, he's trending in the right direction. He's got 3 straight top 20s. 8th his last time out. And what does he have? 1 win on the Web.com tour?
Yeah, and Web.com graduate, and I think might have actually been a multiple Web.com graduate. I've seen his name on a couple of occasions, or maybe it was just sponsor exemptions because of his college affiliation. But just somebody that kind of needed the longer path and some weeding out time on the Web.com tour, but he is on a good run right now. He's 16th at Tampa, 13th in the Dominican Republic in the opposite event, opposite the match play, and then goes to Houston and gets the top 10.
All right, Abraham Ancer is your long shot pick. I'll go with J.B. Holmes. Holmes has played well here, 3 top 15s and 5 appearances. And he is trending in the right direction. Still has a ways to go before he can trend enough as far as in the top 10, contending for a win, but the field is dried down, so maybe that's what he needs to contend here. And that's why I'll go with him at 50-1 as a long shot. All right, Joel, who's your first alternate? Will it be Mr. Surrey?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go for that. It's either him or Adam Scott, so I'll go with the guy with a little higher odds. But he's been playing mostly in Europe. He's starting to get his footing over here in the U.S., and he looked good at the match play, and then he was tied for 8th in Houston, shot 3 rounds in the 60s there. Getting better week by week, and in a weak field like this, I could see another high finish this week too. I was hoping to get him with long shot odds, but I'll take him as an alternate for the other one.
Okay. Jeff, who's your alternate?
My alternate, I'm going to go with a guy who has cooled off a little bit, but has been consistent in San Antonio. Has never finished out of the top 25 when he has played, and he's actually taken San Antonio off the last couple of years, but he is back, and honestly, he's back now at a better point in his career. So let's see what Pat Perez can do at 40-1.
All right. Yep. Pat Perez, 4 top 25s in 4 attempts, and 20th in 2015, the last time he's played there, and sitting there, as you said, at 40-1. I'll go ahead and take Brandt Snedeker, 35-1. Snedeker, one of these players trying to get back into the swing of things. So 23rd is last time out, 25th here a couple of years ago, 4th in 2011. So I'll take Snedeker as my number 1 alternate. And the last round of picks, and that is our alternate long shot play. Joel, who are you going to go with in case Ryan Palmer doesn't make it out there?
I'm going to go with another Texas guy, but I'm going to go way down the list a little bit. I talked about this guy up a lot early in the year, but he's been nowhere to be seen recently. But Andrew Landry at 150-1. He had this long string of missed cuts, but last week at Hilton Head, he was fourth in the field in greens of regulation. He got all the way to 9 under at one point midday on Sunday. Just completely tanked the back nine, but so did a lot of players there. But with the Texas ties, and he's played well in this kind of before. I think he's starting to feel it again. I like him at those odds a lot.
All right, Landry, 150 to 1. Jeff, who are you going to go with in case Answer doesn't play?
Well, I'm not going that far down the list, but I am going to kind of tap into that Las Vegas vibe a little bit. Scott Piercy showed a little bit last week. He has not been quite as consistent this year as we might have expected, but showed some promise with a tie for 16th last week. And we've been talking about if you play in Vegas, you got to play in the wind as well. So I'll put Scott Piercy on the list at 50 to 1.
All right. And I'm going to go ahead and stick at 50 to 1. I'll take a player just like Snedeker, who is trying to get back into the swing of things. But he's only playing here for the first time. I do like his 7th place finish last week. That's Bill Haas. So I'll take Haas as my alternate to J.B. Holmes. And I took Haas over Streelman. So I know Brady mentioned Streelman. Streelman, I think, might be a decent play. 7th last week, couple top 15s and 4 tries. He's also at 50 to 1. So that was another player that I was thinking about. And I was also, as far as the other 40 to 1 shots, I was thinking about Zach Johnson, back-to-back winner in 08-09. I'm sure he wasn't very happy with the switch from La Cantera.
This one doesn't fit him quite nearly as well.
No, he does have a couple top 20s here, including 6th in 2014, but no wins like the back-to-back wins to end the era at La Cantera back at almost 10 years ago. So that was another player that would have been possible. What about some of these other players that maybe we've never talked about on the show before? What about Joaquin Niemann? What do we know about him, Jeff?
This is his professional debut. He spent almost a year at number 1 in the World Amateur ranking. Just played the Masters a couple of weeks ago as the winner of the Latin American Amateur. In fact, he was set to turn pro at the start of the year, but the Latin American Amateur happened to be in his hometown of Santiago, Chile. So he said, well, I'll enter that and see what happens. Lo and behold, he wins. He gets the Masters invitation. So he put off turning pro until after he could play Augusta National. So this will be his professional debut. He's a talented player, obviously, because he spent I want to say 48 weeks at number 1 in the World Amateur rankings. And smallish guy, not a big power hitter, long enough, but really does not have a lot of experience against professional fields at this level. He's won some tournaments against pros, in South America, things like that. But obviously very, very talented. Was actually going to go into college golf, but was dealt a setback there because his test score for English as a second language didn't meet the admission standards at the University of South Florida. So he said, well, I'm playing pretty well. Maybe I'll just go the professional route, and then put it off for a few months when he had the Masters invite.
All right. Other players that maybe you don't know too much about him now, but maybe we will. I mean, Chris Paisley is starting to play pretty well. The English player will be playing here for the first time. And another player that has a power game is Cameron Champ. What about those guys?
Well, Champ.
Joel, do you know either one, Joel?
Oh yeah. Paisley, he done most of his pretty much everything out in Europe, but he was super hot in January. Had a win on the European Tour, 2 other top 5. He came over here. We saw him for the first time on this side of the ocean for the TPC Mexico, and he got at least 65 in the round 1. Came off just blazing and looking like, but he kind of fell back to earth after that, and his overall finish wasn't super impressive. But he's someone who he's been looking at least good in Europe, and I guess this will be his first one in the U.S. So he played at Tennessee, so he's familiar with the U.S. But I believe this is his first actual tournament here.
Okay. And Jeff, what do we know about Cameron Champ?
Well, for those that were watching the U.S. Open last year, Cameron Champ was actually on the second page of the leaderboard, maybe even snuck onto the first page of the leaderboard early in the tournament over at Erin Hills. He is a long hitter and Texas A&M guy. So now that he's turned professional, I think he's one of those guys right now that has 1 foot in the Web.com tour and 1 foot on the PGA Tour. Would love to earn enough of those Phantom FedEx Cup points to get special temporary status. I'm not quite sure that he's all that close. Of course, he could go the Satoshi Kodaira route and just win the thing, and then he would have automatic membership. But somebody that we've seen a little bit of at the Open last year, and I think he'll be on the PGA Tour before too long.
All right.
He was eighth through 2 rounds at the U.S. Open. That's pretty impressive for how well experienced he is.
All right. Well, maybe he'll be the next Xander Schauffele.
Certainly could be a possibility.
He hasn't been too good on the Web.com tour this year, but maybe.
All right. So any other names, you guys, this week that you were thinking about? Again, it's not a great field, so I'm sure we covered just about everybody. But did we leave anybody off? Anybody, Joel? Before we let you go.
Did anyone take Jimmy Walker? I feel like
Jimmy
nobody
Walker.
did.
No, nobody took Jimmy Walker. He is he's a champ just a couple of years ago and a Baylor grad, and he's played well here before.
Yeah, he's kind of a Texas guy. I mean, I know he's not originally from there, but he plays college there, and he's done some good stuff there. He looks like he's kind of coming back around a little bit. I mean, I say this every week, but Adam Scott, if he can even just get passable putting, he's going to be really high up on all these leaderboards again. He's doing everything else really well right now. And not sure a few other guys I was considering here. I feel like I consider Johnny Vegas every week just because of his length and everything. You never know when he's going to show up, and can't really bet on that. But other than that, I think we hit on all the big ones. Sharma's back for this one too. Kevin Na is right in that range. He's had some decent things. Well, not this year, but he had some earlier in the year.
Okay. Yeah, Scott. Hey, look. Sometimes if you're just there's one part of your game that's down, then maybe all you gotta do is put it all together for 1 week, and that'll be something to watch for Adam Scott. But we'll see if he can get his game going again. Somebody that has boatloads of talent, but the putter's got to get going. All right. So, Joel, appreciate your time as always. And next week, I guess we'll be talking team golf.
Yeah.
You excited about that?
Fun. It was pretty fun. I was a little skeptical going into last year, but that was a lot of fun, especially that Monday finish. Kisner was that was Kisner, right? That was Kisner and Blitz.
Kisner,
that was fun.
Team with Scott Brown.
Oh, sorry, Brown. Blitz was with Cameron Smith. That's okay. Sorry, I just remember Kisner from that shot, that wedge shot he hit in right at the end. Yeah, that was Blitz and Cameron Smith. But yeah, it ended up being a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that was the shot where Kisner forgot he had a teammate, right?
Yes.
When he was celebrating.
So.
All right. That's okay. He's not used to playing in the big team sports, big team golf. But now he is. Excellent. Thanks, Joel. Talk to you next week.
All right. Thank you.
All right, that's Joel Cook. And so what do we know about next week, Jeff? Do we have any interesting pairs yet? You have your first look report for the event already to go, or almost ready to go. So
I'll be honest, I'm a little bit of a post-heritage hangover,
you have
so
nothing
I haven't
ready.
looked at the team pairings yet, although obviously we will have Cam Smith and Jonas Blixt back together, and Kisner and Brown, they play a lot of friendly games as teammates anyway, and have going back to their junior days.
Mm-hmm.
So that chemistry was not a surprise to me. But I'm kind of with Joel. I wasn't sure last year but maybe because we've become more exposed to team golf, whether it's the Ryder Cup, the President's Cup, the Solheim Cup, we understand it better. And I it'll never grow to the point where, it's even, equatable to, a Riviera or a Bay Hill. But at this point in the schedule, you pointed it out, kind of near the top of the show, this is a big lull in the schedule. Let's do something to create a little interest. And New Orleans rolled the dice, and I don't think it was necessarily a bad idea.
All right, well, a lot depends on all, look, we'll find out what the pairings are, the groups are, the teams are next week. That definitely has a lot to do with, the allure of what we'll watch next week. But like you said, it's different, and I guess it's better if it's look, we got a pretty weak field this week, so I guess if the field was any worse than this, which it could be, then you might as well just do something different and give the fans something else to chew on. So we'll talk more about that, of course, next week as we preview the event. And it's a regular, starts on Thursday, ends on Sunday, right? Unless they want to end on Monday again?
Nothing different. The only thing about this time of year in New Orleans is sometimes you get into some of that squally weather, and that has plagued them over the course of time. But nothing out of the ordinary that Mother Nature wouldn't have a say over.
All right, so that'll wrap it up for Joel Cook, for Brady Cannon, for Jeff Shane. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in to Prime Sports Golf. We've got New Orleans next week, and then things get really fun with Wells Fargo and the Players and all the other big events coming up in the summer. So thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to go to experts.covers.com to get your 50% off any purchase by using the promo code PRIME50. That's PRIME50. And for the best golf coverage on the net, you can go to ProGolfWeekly.com. So enjoy the golf this week, everybody. We'll see you next time.